The Polaroid image is very tangible. It occurs right before your eyes. It develops. There's actual chemistry going on. It's not just some sort of electronic process. It's a chemical and a physical one that can be shared between people. Not only those who took the photo, but those who then watch it develop.
When I press this button, a new era in photography begins. Polaroid introduces at the touch of one button.
Isn't it your turn to own a Polaroid color pack camera?
Yeah, you guys ready? Rolling.
My name is Kyler Zeleny. I'm 27 years old and the founder of the Found Polaroids Project. In 2008, Polaroid had announced that they were going to be discontinuing their integral film. And they had announced that they would have a number of years before this had been finalized. They had purchased a certain amount of chemicals and supplies that would last them what they thought would be a number of years, which is actually interesting because it took about 6 months for the supply to completely dry up. The Found Polaroid Project is a mass collection of 6,000 Polaroids that I've collected over the last few years. And the idea was to originally try to connect the individuals in the images with these photographs. We have these images. We know that they existed, these people existed. We wanted to do something with the images after trying to return them to people that was creative. And the idea was to get people to write fiction based on who these people could have been, not who they are in the image, as much as who they could have been in that moment or previous times in their life. So we're talking about two different things, but they're very much connected. It's the idea of image journey in the Polaroid and the idea of life journey in the person who's in the Polaroid.
Since 1947, Edwin Land and Polaroid have pursued a central concept, the removal of the barriers between the photographer and his subject.
Edward Land founded the Polaroid Corporation, and he was an inventor, he was a visionary. 1970s, he produces the integral film, he's on the cover of Life and Time magazine, so it kind of shows you the importance. And this is then a film that becomes shot at 1 billion images a year. It wasn't until 2011 when I was studying at Goldsmiths that I came across this lot of Polaroids. It was 484, and I couldn't really understand whose images these were, and I thought that was interesting, and where they had come from and where they were going. So I bid on that, and then someone else bid on it. And we had a bit of a bidding war, which tells us something interesting, that not only was there someone willing to purchase them, but there was a number of people that are willing to purchase them. And so that there was not only an implied social value, but there was also an economic one. It's different. Having the digital images are vastly different than having the physical ones. And I'm not sure if you can tell, but there's a smell of them, right? Like there's a very chemically smell based in these images. And it's not a very nice smell. It's kind of like a cross between maybe heavy metals, lead, and cleaning product, and maybe like 1970s glue. But there's definitely a smell. The thing that's really interesting about these is looking at the photos over time, you forget certain photos and you connect with different ones at different times. And so something that meant very little to me 3 years ago might be a very impactful image today. There's something really magical about Polaroid film as integral, as being not only the negative, but also the print. The Polaroid still holds a certain visual aura or photographic aura that a lot of other mediums don't possess, especially the digital, because we can produce an image 100 million times. We can never do that with the Polaroid. It is the only copy that's ever going to exist. Polaroid film, or film photography in general, is resurging in the same way that that vinyl is for music, especially in a time when we have a lack of it, where a lot of stuff is mediated through a device. There is one individual that stands amongst the rest. And if you go onto the website, that's Polaroid number 95. And it's this man who's staring deadpan into the camera with these beautiful 1950 glasses. He's an elderly man, not too old, so about 60. And I feel when I see that image that I want to know what kind of life he's lived. I want to know what he's seen in his life. To me, it's a really beautiful image because it allows you to think about who he could have been. That's essentially what the project is about writing about who these people could have been, what could have happened in their lifetime. We've lived a lot of these moments before, and we've seen a lot of these poses and a lot of these hairstyles because they're from the past and they become imprinted into our minds in a certain way. There's something about it that connects us. It's an interesting question to think if we live in a voyeuristic society or a voyeuristic time, and if we've always kind of been interested in looking. We take on a voyeuristic gaze in a lot of different contexts. I would consider myself a voyeur, in the same way that I would kind of consider everyone a voyeur. There's ethics involved with every one of the images in the Found Polaroid collection. And the level of ethics, you can argue, kind of varies or depends on the type of image. And so it becomes kind of difficult to evaluate in what kind of context we want to place these images online. Why call myself a keeper more than a curator? I think what a curator does essentially is takes what this collection would be and makes certain narratives out of it. I don't think that these Polaroids are mine. I'm just the person who currently has them. And I'd like to look at it that way. And I have no issue with anyone contacting me and saying that, hey, this is me in that image, I'd like it back. And I would love to give it back to them. That's the whole idea. That's originally how the project started. And then I'd love to know what their story is. When you're using a finite material, like the Polaroid film, because they didn't produce it anymore, you essentially have a beautiful resource. But within that, you're also kind of confused about when you should be using it because, say you have 100 more images to take. What do you use them to capture? How selective do you become to the point that the film chemicals themselves might start to change, and that might affect your images? The colors might run, the battery itself might run out. And so it's this interesting middle ground where you want to be selective with the way that you're photographing, but at the same time, you know that you can't be too selective because if you wait too long, you've essentially made that film, that magical stock you had, irrelevant. We like to think of images and objects as having a life. And it's easy to do with photography. So with a photograph, just like a human, we're born, we're given significance over a certain amount of time. We start to become frail. The edges of an image become to break, and the hues in the image itself start to fade. And just like in life with death, the image itself starts to die.